The Grand Council chamber of Nexus Station stretched across 3 kilometers of polished crystalline walls. Representatives from 47 different species sat in their designated sections, each area carefully designed to accommodate their unique physiologies. The Zephyrians floated in their gas-filled chambers, their tentacles swaying gracefully as they communicated through bioluminescent patterns. The insectoid Krillax clicked and chittered in their hive mind discussions, while the massive Gorvani delegates sat motionless, their stone-like skin reflecting the chamber's artificial lights. At the center of it all, the human delegation occupied a modest section of simple chairs and a basic table. Ambassador Sarah Chen sat perfectly still, her hands folded, watching the proceedings with careful attention. Beside her, General Marcus Rodriguez maintained his military bearing, while Dr. Elena Vasquez quietly reviewed data on her tablet. The 3 humans looked almost insignificant compared to the exotic aliens surrounding them. Chancellor Vextar of the Hegemony Council called the session to order. His species, the Dominari, had ruled galactic politics for over 3,000 years. Standing 4 meters tall with 4 arms and skin that shifted colors with his emotions, he commanded attention from every being in the chamber. "We are gathered here today to address the human problem," Vexitar announced, his voice carrying through universal translators. "For too long, humanity has expanded unchecked through our galaxy. They have colonized systems without proper authorization, established trade routes that bypass our established networks, and worst of all, they refuse to acknowledge the natural order of galactic civilization." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The Zephyrian representative pulsed with approval patterns, while several Krillax delegates clicked their mandibles in synchronized support. Ambassador Chen remained motionless, her expression neutral. She had expected this moment for months. The various alien civilizations had grown increasingly uncomfortable with humanity's rapid expansion and technological advancement. In just 200 years since first contact, humans had established colonies in over 300 systems and developed technologies that often surpassed what ancient civilizations had achieved in millennia. "The humans must be contained," declared Ambassador Thys of the Serpentine Alliance. Her snake-like body coiled as she spoke, hood flaring with each word. "They spread like a plague, consuming resources and establishing settlements wherever they please. They show no respect for established territorial boundaries or traditional power structures. Furthermore," added the Krillax speaker, its translation device converting rapid clicks into words, "their individualistic nature threatens the stability of collective decision-making processes. They cannot be trusted to follow orders or maintain proper hierarchical structures." General Rodriguez shifted slightly in his seat, his jaw tightening, but he remained silent as instructed. The military officer had spent his career fighting to protect human colonies from various alien threats, and listening to these accusations without response tested his patience. Chancellor Vextar gestured with 2 of his 4 arms. "The solution is simple and fair. Humanity will be restricted to their current systems. No further expansion will be permitted. All existing trade agreements with human entities will be renegotiated under galactic oversight. Human military vessels will be limited in number and firepower. Most importantly, all human technological development will be subject to council approval before implementation." Dr. Vasquez looked up from her tablet, catching Ambassador Chen's eye. The scientist's expression conveyed what they both knew. These restrictions would effectively end human progress and independence. The proposed limitations would turn humanity into a client species, dependent on alien approval for even basic advancement. "These terms are non-negotiable," Vextar continued. "The humans have 48 hours to formally accept these conditions. Failure to comply will result in a coordinated response from all council members to enforce these restrictions, through military action if necessary." The chamber erupted in approving sounds from dozens of different species. Harmonic tones from the crystalline resonance mixed with the deep rumbles of the behemoth delegation. Even species that had previously maintained neutrality seemed to support the harsh measures. Ambassador Chen finally stood, her movement causing the massive chamber to fall silent. Every eye, sensor, and detection organ focused on the small human woman as she walked to the central speaking platform. "Honored delegates," she began, her voice calm and measured, "I have listened carefully to your concerns and your proposed solution. I understand that many of you view humanity as a threat to the established order. You see our rapid expansion and technological development as dangerous to the stability you have maintained for thousands of years?" She paused, looking around the chamber at the assembled representatives. "You offer us restrictions, limitations, and oversight. You ask us to accept dependency and submission in exchange for permission to exist within the boundaries you set for us." The silence in the chamber was absolute. Even the usually restless Krillax had stopped their constant clicking. "I want to be perfectly clear in my response," Chen continued. "We reject your terms completely. We reject your authority over human affairs. We reject your assumption that you have the right to dictate the future of our species." Gasps and alarmed sounds echoed through the chamber. Several delegates began speaking at once, their translation devices creating a cacophony of outraged responses. Chen raised her hand for silence. "However, we are not interested in conflict. We did not come here to declare war or issue threats. Instead, we choose a different path entirely." She turned to face Chancellor Vextar directly. "Effective immediately, humanity withdraws from all galactic institutions, trade agreements, and diplomatic relationships. We will no longer participate in council sessions, honor existing treaties, or recognize the authority of galactic law over human affairs." The Chancellor's skin shifted to a deep red, indicating extreme agitation. "You cannot simply walk away from galactic civilization. No species exists in isolation." "Watch us," Chen replied simply. "We came to your galaxy seeking friendship and cooperation. You have made it clear that the only relationship you will accept is one of dominance and submission. Therefore, we choose no relationship at all." General Rodriguez and Dr. Vasquez stood as well, gathering their materials. The three humans began walking toward the chamber exit as chaos erupted behind them. "This is madness," shouted the Serpentine representative. "You will doom yourselves to isolation and technological stagnation." Ambassador Chen paused at the exit and turned back one final time. "Perhaps, but we would rather face an uncertain future as free beings than accept a certain future as your subjects. Goodbye." The three humans left the chamber, their footsteps echoing in the sudden silence that followed their departure. Behind them, 47 different species struggled to comprehend what had just occurred. Never in galactic history had a species simply walked away from civilization itself. 6 months after the human delegation's dramatic exit from Nexus Station, the galaxy's major powers expected to see humanity beg for readmission to galactic society. Instead, something far more disturbing was happening. Human colonies throughout known space had gone completely silent. Admiral Kethvor of the Dominari First Fleet stood on the bridge of his flagship, studying the tactical display with growing confusion. His elongated skull, characteristic of his species' military caste, bore the scars of a dozen campaigns across 3 sectors. He had never encountered anything like this. "Report," he commanded, his translator converting his melodic language into standard galactic. "Sir, we have completed scans of all human colonies in this sector," his intelligence officer replied. "The results are unexpected." The holographic display showed 12 star systems that had contained thriving human settlements just months before. Now every single colony appeared abandoned. Space stations hung empty in orbit. Planetary settlements showed no signs of life. Most puzzling of all, there was no debris field, no signs of struggle or evacuation. "They simply vanished?" Admiral Kethvor asked. "Not exactly, sir. Our deep scans show that all infrastructure remains intact. Power systems are still operational. Automated systems continue functioning. But there are no life signs anywhere. It's as if the humans just left." Similar reports were flooding in from across the galaxy. The Serpentine Alliance had discovered empty human trading posts along their borders. Krillax scouts found abandoned mining operations that had been extracting rare minerals just weeks before. Even the neutral Ethereal Collective reported that human research stations in their territory had gone dark without explanation. On the oceanic world of Tidal Prime, Councillor Rifa of the Aquatic Federation reviewed intelligence reports with mounting concern. Her species had maintained cautious but profitable relationships with human merchants who traded in water purification technology. Now those trade routes had completely ceased. "Our economic projections show significant impacts," her advisor reported, gills fluttering with anxiety. "Human trade represented 14% of our technological imports. Their absence is already affecting our industrial output." Rifa's tentacles writhed as she processed this information. "What about alternative suppliers? We've contacted the Dominari, the Zephyrians, and even the Mechanic Collective. None of them possess equivalent technology to what the humans were providing. The closest alternatives would cost 3 times as much and deliver only 60% of the efficiency. This scenario was repeating itself across the galaxy. The Resonant Consortium discovered that their crystal-based technology required specific rare earth elements that only human miners had been extracting from asteroid fields. The Gorvani Republic found their military equipment, repairs grinding to a halt without human-manufactured precision. Components. Chancellor Vextar called an emergency council session just 8 months after the humans had walked away. The Great Chamber buzzed with nervous energy as representatives shared their growing concerns. The situation is becoming problematic, admitted Ambassador Theiss of the Serpentine Alliance. Her usual confident demeanor seemed diminished. Our border security systems relied heavily on human sensor technology. Without replacement parts and software updates, we're experiencing significant gaps in our monitoring capabilities. The Krillax delegation clicked frantically among themselves before their speaker addressed the council. The collective efficiency of our hive cities has decreased by 22%. Human logistical algorithms were integrated into our resource distribution networks. We cannot replicate their optimization processes. Dr. Zeflon of the Scientific Consortium floated in his atmospheric chamber, his gas-based body pulsing with agitation. Perhaps most concerning are the reports from our research stations. We've discovered that human involvement in joint projects was far more significant than we realized. Several breakthrough technologies we thought were our own developments actually depended on human theoretical contributions. Chancellor Vextar's skin shifted through several colors as he processed these reports. The Dominari had always prided themselves on their technological superiority, but even they were feeling the impact. Human manufacturing techniques had quietly become integrated into dozens of their production lines. Where did they go? Demanded Admiral Rexthon of the warrior caste. 300 colonies don't just disappear. There should be heat signatures, communications, something. Our best intelligence suggests they've withdrawn beyond the galactic rim, reported Commander Vextun. Long-range sensors have detected what might be human ships in the void between galaxies, but at such distances we cannot confirm anything definitive. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The void between galaxies was considered impossible to traverse by any known technology. The distances were so vast that even the fastest ships would require hundreds of years to reach another galaxy. The radiation levels and cosmic conditions were thought to be lethal to most known life forms. Impossible, declared the behemoth representative, his massive form shifting on its specially reinforced platform. No species has ever successfully colonized the intergalactic void. The energy requirements alone would exceed the output of a dozen solar systems. Ambassador Theiss coiled nervously. Unless they develop technology we don't know about. The humans were always secretive about their most advanced research projects. This revelation sent ripples of unease through the assembly. If humans had achieved intergalactic travel capability, it suggested their technological advancement had been even more significant than anyone had realized. Counselor Rifa raised a tentacle for attention. Perhaps we should consider reopening negotiations. The economic disruptions are affecting multiple sectors of galactic civilization. Negotiations require someone to negotiate with, Chancellor Vextar replied grimly. They've cut all communication channels. Our attempts to contact human vessels have been met with complete silence. What about their allies? Suggested Dr. Zeflon. Some species maintained closer relationships with humanity than others. We've contacted them all, Commander Vextun reported. The Free Trader Coalition, the Independent Miners Association, even the Mercenary Guild. None of them have had any contact with humans since the Exodus began. It's as if humanity has completely severed all ties with galactic civilization. The weight of their situation began to settle over the Council. What had seemed like a simple matter of putting an upstart species in its place had evolved into something far more complex. The humans hadn't just left. They had taken with them capabilities and knowledge that galactic civilization had become dependent upon without realizing it. How long before we see complete system failures? Asked Admiral Rexthon. Conservative estimates suggest 6 months for critical infrastructure, replied Dr. Zeflon. Possibly less for systems that require regular maintenance or updates. Chancellor Vexitar stood, his 4 arms spread wide in a gesture of authority. This situation requires immediate action. We need to locate the humans and convince them to return. The stability of galactic civilization may depend on it. But even as he spoke, every delegate in the chamber understood the growing reality. The humans hadn't just walked away from negotiations. They had walked away from the galaxy itself, leaving behind a civilization that was only now discovering how dependent it had become on the very species it had tried to subjugate. 18 months after humanity's disappearance, the first cascade failure occurred in the Zephyrian core worlds. The atmospheric processors that maintained their gas giant habitats began breaking down one by one. Without human-designed filtration systems and maintenance protocols, toxic compounds started building up in their carefully balanced environments. Dr. Erthis floated frantically through the emergency command center of Zephyr Prime, her bioluminescent patterns flashing in distress patterns that hadn't been seen for centuries. The readings on her biomonitors showed catastrophic system failures across 7 different habitat domes. "How many do we have left?" she asked her assistant, tentacles writhing with anxiety. "Dome 7 is still stable, but showing early warning signs. Dome 12 might last another 3 weeks. The others?" He trailed off, his own light patterns dim with despair. "The backup filtration systems? We tried implementing them 6 months ago. They're running at 40% efficiency and failing faster than we can repair them. We simply don't understand how the human systems worked at the molecular level." 3 sectors away, the Krillax Collective faced an even more immediate crisis. Their hive cities were experiencing complete logistical breakdown. The resource distribution networks that fed billions of Krillax workers had been optimized by human algorithms that no one had bothered to fully understand. Now, with those systems failing, food shortages were triggering panic responses throughout the collective consciousness. Queen Mother Zixith stood in the central command nexus, her massive form surrounded by thousands of worker drones frantically attempting to manually coordinate supply chains. The clicking and chittering of the hive mind had grown chaotic, lacking the precise harmonies that characterized normal operations. "Report on food distribution efficiency," she commanded through pheromone releases. "Down to 37% of optimal levels." "Queen Mother," replied the coordinator drone, "manual systems cannot process the complexity variables required for 11 billion individuals across 43 hive cities." "What about the emergency protocols developed by our own scientists?" "They work, but only for populations under 50 million. At larger scales, the computational requirements exceed our processing capabilities. The humans somehow solved problems we didn't even know existed." The crisis was spreading beyond individual worlds. The galactic economy, which had seemed stable for millennia, was experiencing its first major disruption in recorded history. Trade routes that had relied on human logistics coordination were collapsing. Manufacturing centers couldn't obtain necessary components. Communication networks were developing increasing delays and failures. On the trading hub of Commerce Central, Director Vel Andor of the Merchants Guild stared at reports that would have been unthinkable 2 years earlier. His crystalline body dimmed as he processed the devastating figures. "Galactic trade volume is down 68%, his financial officer reported. "We're seeing complete route failures in sectors that have been stable for over 1,000 years. How is that possible? The humans were only involved in maybe 20% of galactic trade." "That's what we thought, sir. But they weren't just handling 20%. They were optimizing the other 80%. Their shipping algorithms, their cargo organization systems, their predictive maintenance protocols. It all worked together in ways we never realized." Similar discoveries were being made across every sector of galactic civilization. The Gorvani military discovered that their strategic planning software contained human-developed subroutines that had never been documented. When these systems began failing, their ability to coordinate multi-system defense operations collapsed completely. General Rokhtar, whose stone-like features rarely showed emotion, actually displayed visible cracks of stress as he reviewed the military situation. "How many fleets are currently operational?" he asked his staff. "At full capability? Maybe 30%, General. The rest are experiencing navigation errors, communication delays, or equipment failures. Our ships were designed with human-manufactured components at critical points throughout their systems. What about our own manufacturing capabilities?" "We're trying, sir, but Human precision engineering exceeded our capabilities in several areas. We can make substitutes, but they're larger, less efficient, and fail more frequently. A ship that could operate for years without maintenance now needs repairs every few weeks. The Resonant Consortium faced perhaps the strangest challenge of all. Their crystal-based technology depended on specific harmonic frequencies that had been fine-tuned using human mathematical models. Without those precise calculations, their crystalline networks were slowly falling out of synchronization. Harmonic Master Tonal stood within the great crystal chamber of their homeworld. Feeling the discord that was spreading through their civilization's technological foundation, the crystals around him pulsed with irregular patterns, their usual perfect harmonies replaced by increasingly chaotic vibrations. The humans somehow understood crystal resonance better than we do, admitted his chief researcher, a fact that caused visible distress throughout their crystalline forms. Their mathematical approaches revealed harmonic relationships we had never discovered, despite millennia of study. Emergency meetings were being called across the galaxy as the scope of the crisis became clear. The withdrawal of humanity wasn't just an economic inconvenience, it was threatening the fundamental technological foundation of galactic civilization. Dr. Zeflon of the Scientific Consortium addressed an emergency assembly of researchers from dozens of species. His gaseous form swirled with unusual density patterns indicating extreme agitation. "We are facing a technological regression event," he announced. "Our analysis suggests that human knowledge was integrated into our systems at levels we never documented or fully understood. Without that knowledge, we're not just losing efficiency, we're losing capabilities we thought were our own." The research data was sobering. Human contributions to galactic technology hadn't been limited to their own inventions. They had quietly improved and optimized existing alien technologies, often without the original creators realizing the extent of the modifications. "How is this possible?" demanded Dr. Kethram of the Dominari Science Institute. "We have detailed records of all technological developments. There should be documentation." "There is," Dr. Zeflon replied. "But the humans contributed through indirect methods, small improvements, optimization suggestions, alternative approaches that seemed minor at the time. When combined, these contributions created dependency relationships that weren't obvious until they were removed. The implications were staggering. Galactic civilization had been slowly becoming dependent on human innovation without realizing it. The aliens had focused on the humans' rapid expansion in military capabilities, while missing the more subtle but crucial technological integration that had been occurring. Chancellor Vextar called another emergency council session, but this time, the tone was very different from the confident ultimatum delivery of 18 months earlier. His skin remained a constant pale blue, indicating deep concern and uncertainty. "The situation has become critical," he announced to the assembled delegates. "We are no longer dealing with economic inconvenience. We are facing the potential collapse of key infrastructure across multiple sectors of galactic civilization." "What are our options?" asked Ambassador Theiss, her serpentine form coiled tightly with stress. "We have teams working to reverse engineer human technologies and develop alternatives, but the timeline is measured in decades, not months. Meanwhile, our systems continue to degrade." The weight of their mistake was settling over the council. They had driven away the very species whose innovations had been quietly supporting their entire civilization. Now, with each passing day, the galaxy was discovering just how high the price of their arrogance would be. 2.5 years after humanity's exodus, the galaxy was experiencing its first true dark age in over 5,000 years. What had begun as infrastructure failures had escalated into complete civilizational breakdown across multiple sectors. The carefully maintained balance of galactic society was collapsing like a house of cards. The Serpentine Alliance's border worlds were falling to raider attacks for the first time in centuries. Without human sensor technology and defensive algorithms, their early warning systems had become nearly useless. Pirates and hostile factions that had been contained for generations were now running rampant across previously secure space. Admiral Cisara of the Serpentine Navy slithered through the command center of her flagship. Her hood flared in constant agitation. The tactical displays around her showed the devastating reality of their situation. "How many worlds have gone dark this week?" she hissed to her intelligence officer. 7, Admiral. 3 to pirate raids, 2 to system failures, and 2 simply stopped communicating. We don't have enough operational ships to investigate. What about the hegemony reinforcements? The Dominari are dealing with their own crisis. 3 of their core industrial worlds have suffered complete manufacturing breakdowns. They can't spare any ships. The economic collapse was accelerating beyond anyone's worst projections. Entire star systems were reverting to subsistence-level technology as complex supply chains disintegrated. Worlds that had supported billions were struggling to feed millions. On the agricultural world of Harvest Moon, Administrator Velthak of the Gorvani Republic watched crop yields plummet for the 4th consecutive season. The human-designed agricultural optimization systems had failed 8 months ago, and their attempts to replace them had been disasters. The soil analysis systems are completely unreliable, reported his agricultural specialist. Without proper nutrient monitoring, we're essentially farming blind. Crop yields are down 75% from optimal levels. What about manual farming techniques? We're trying, Administrator, but our population has grown far beyond what manual agriculture can support. We need the precision systems to maintain current population levels. Without them, he left the sentence unfinished. The unspoken reality was becoming clear across the galaxy. Galactic civilization had grown to depend entirely on technological systems that required constant maintenance and optimization. When those systems failed, the civilizations they supported couldn't simply fall back to older methods. The infrastructure and knowledge for pre-technological survival had been lost. Centuries ago, the Kralax Collective was experiencing the most dramatic collapse of all. Their hive mind structure required precise coordination of resources and information flow. As their systems failed, the collective consciousness itself was beginning to fragment. Queen Mother Zixith felt the discord spreading through her consciousness like a disease. Entire hive cities were going silent as their populations could no longer be sustained by failing distribution networks. For the first time in Kralax history, individual drones were breaking away from the collective, reverting to primitive individual survival instincts. Status report on the core worlds, she commanded, though she could feel the answers through the increasingly chaotic mental links. 14 hive cities have gone completely silent, Queen Mother. 23 more are reporting critical failures. The collective consciousness is fragmenting as communication networks fail. Begin emergency protocols for population reduction. The words caused a ripple of horror through the remaining connected drones. Population reduction hadn't been necessary for the Kralax in over 2,000 years. It meant allowing entire hive cities to die, rather than waste resources trying to support them. Meanwhile, in the neutral territories, independent researchers were making disturbing discoveries about the true extent of humanity's technological integration. Dr. Athon, a cybernetic intelligence from the Synthetic Collective, had been analyzing the cascade failures across the galaxy. His mechanical form processed data at incredible speeds, but even his advanced systems struggled to comprehend the scope of what humanity had accomplished. The pattern is becoming clear, he reported to the Emergency Research Council. Human technological contributions weren't just additions to existing systems. They were architectural improvements that made the entire galactic technology base more efficient and stable. Explain, requested Dr. Zeflon, his gaseous form swirling with intense interest despite the dire circumstances. Think of galactic technology as a vast, interconnected web. Each species contributed their own section, but the connections between sections were often inefficient or unstable. Humans didn't just add their own web. They rewove the connections throughout the entire structure. When they left, they took those connections with them. The implications were staggering. Humanity hadn't just been another member of galactic civilization. They had become the invisible foundation that held the entire structure together. How long do we have before complete collapse? Asked Harmonic Master Tonal of the Resonant Consortium. Dr. Ethon's optical sensors dimmed as he processed the calculation. Based on current degradation rates, 18 months before critical infrastructure fails across the core worlds. 6 months before outer rim territories become completely isolated. Some systems may hold out longer, but they'll essentially be technological islands in a sea of failed civilizations. The Research Council fell silent as they absorbed this timeline. The greatest galactic civilization in recorded history had perhaps 18 months before collapse. Chancellor Vextar was facing the worst crisis in Dominari history. His species had ruled galactic politics for 3 millennia, but their authority meant nothing when the systems that supported their empire were falling apart. Rebellion was spreading across their territory as worlds struggled to maintain basic services. "Sir," his aide reported, "we're receiving formal declarations of independence from 12 more worlds. They're claiming the hegemony can no longer provide basic governmental services." Vextar's skin had remained a constant gray for weeks, indicating deep depression and exhaustion. "Do we have the military capability to maintain order?" "No, sir. Fleet operations are down to less than 20% effectiveness. Most of our ships are stranded in port due to navigation system failures or maintenance issues we can't resolve." For the first time in Dominari history, their empire was crumbling, not due to external conquest or internal revolution, but simply because the technology that made governance possible had stopped working. Emergency sessions were being called daily now, but the meetings had become exercises in shared despair rather than productive planning. Every proposed solution required technologies or capabilities that were no longer available. "What about sending expeditions to find the humans?" suggested Ambassador Thys during one particularly desperate session. "With what ships?" replied Admiral Rexton bitterly. "Half our fleets can't leave orbit and the other half can't navigate beyond local space. Even if we could mount an expedition, the humans disappeared into intergalactic space. We don't have the technology to follow them." The cruel irony was becoming apparent to everyone. The very technological capabilities they would need to find humanity and beg for their return were among the systems that had failed when humanity left. As the session continued, delegates shared increasingly desperate reports from their homeworlds. The Aquatic Federation was experiencing ecosystem collapse as their water management systems failed. The ethereal collective's energy distribution networks were causing power failures across their dimensional space. Even the ancient and supposedly self-sufficient timekeepers were reporting temporal anomalies as their chronometer systems lost synchronization. The galaxy that had confidently dismissed humanity as an upstart species was learning the hardest lesson in its history. They had mistaken humanity's quiet competence for weakness, their willingness to help for submission, and their integration into galactic society for dependency. Now, as their civilization collapsed around them, they were discovering that humanity had never been dependent on the galaxy at all. The galaxy had become dependent on humanity, and humanity was nowhere to be found. 3 years and 4 months after humanity's departure, the first miracle occurred. It wasn't a miracle of salvation, but a miracle of contact. A single human ship appeared at the edge of the neutral zone, broadcasting on emergency frequencies. The vessel was unlike any human ship the galaxy had seen before. Where human vessels had once been functional but unremarkable, this craft seemed to bend light around its hull, appearing and disappearing from sensors in ways that defied known physics. Its design incorporated materials and energy signatures that didn't match anything in galactic databases. Captain Torvash of the independent monitoring station Deepwatch was the first to detect the anomaly. His mixed-species crew had been maintaining emergency communications networks as galactic civilization crumbled around them, one of the few remaining bridges between isolated worlds. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission on the old emergency band," his communications officer reported, her crystalline form resonating with excitement. It's human." The message was simple and devastating in its brevity. "This is Captain Rebecca Stone of the UES Prometheus. I am authorized to discuss the current crisis with galactic representatives. Any delegation wishing to meet should proceed to coordinates Gamma 77 Alpha in neutral space. You have 72 hours. Within hours, every remaining functional government in the galaxy was scrambling to organize a response. The problem was that very few ships were still capable of interstellar travel, and fewer still could reach the specified coordinates safely. Chancellor Vextar stood in the ruins of his once mighty command center, surrounded by failing holographic displays and emergency lighting. His skin had taken on a permanent ashen tone that indicated a level of stress his species rarely survived. "How many ships do we have that can make the journey?" he asked his naval commander. 3, sir. Maybe 4 if we cannibalize parts from the others. But even then, there's no guarantee they'll remain functional for the return trip." Similar conversations were taking place across the galaxy. The Serpentine Alliance could muster 2 functional vessels. The Krillax Collective had one transport that might survive the journey, provided the crew could maintain collective consciousness long enough to operate it. The Resonant Consortium had lost all their ships to harmonic cascade failures weeks earlier. In the end, a ragtag fleet of 7 ships from different civilizations managed to reach the rendezvous coordinates. What they found there challenged everything they thought they knew about human capabilities. The human vessel wasn't alone. It was accompanied by a construction platform that dwarfed anything the galaxy had ever seen. A massive structure that seemed to exist partially outside normal space, flickering in and out of visibility as it manipulated dimensions the assembled aliens couldn't even perceive. Ambassador Chen walked into the makeshift conference chamber aboard the neutral station that had been hastily constructed for the meeting. She looked exactly the same as she had 3 years ago, showing no signs of the stress that had aged the alien delegates decades in the same period. Behind her walked 2 other humans the delegation didn't recognize. Dr. Sarah Kim appeared to be some kind of scientist, her clothing incorporating technology that seamlessly integrated with her biological systems. The third human introduced himself simply as Engineer Walsh, though his cybernetic enhancements suggested he was something far beyond any engineer the galaxy had known. "Thank you for coming," Ambassador Chen said, taking a seat across from the assembled alien representatives. "I understand the galaxy has been experiencing some difficulties." Chancellor Vexitar's skin flushed dark red with barely controlled emotion. "Difficulties? Your people's departure has caused the collapse of galactic civilization. Billions have died. Entire star systems have gone dark." Chen nodded thoughtfully. "Yes, we've been monitoring the situation. It's unfortunate, but not unexpected." "Not unexpected?" Ambassador Thys coiled in agitation. "You knew this would happen when you left?" "We warned you this would happen," Dr. Kim replied calmly. 3 years ago, Ambassador Chen specifically told the Council that forcing humanity into submission would have consequences. You chose not to listen. Engineer Walsh activated a holographic display that showed the current state of galactic civilization. The image was devastating. Vast regions showing as dark zones where technology had failed completely, isolated pockets of struggling civilizations, and spreading areas of complete societal collapse. "The question now," Chen continued, "is what you're prepared to do about it." "We want to negotiate humanity's return to galactic society," Chancellor Vexitar said desperately. "We're prepared to offer full-status territory rights, anything you want." Chen smiled sadly. "I'm afraid you misunderstand the situation. Humanity has no interest in returning to this galaxy." The statement hit the delegation like a physical blow. Several representatives began speaking at once, their translation devices creating a chaos of desperate pleas and angry demands. Chen raised her hand for silence. "However, we are prepared to offer assistance, but not as members of galactic society. As external contractors," Dr. Kim leaned forward. 3 years ago, you offered us the choice between submission and isolation. We chose isolation and thrived. Now we're offering you a choice between collapse and contracted assistance. What does that mean?" asked the Krillax representative, struggling to maintain collective communication across the failing networks. Engineer Walsh brought up a new display showing detailed schematics and timelines. "We will provide technological assistance to restore critical infrastructure and stabilize failing systems. In return, you will provide compensation in the form of resources, territorial concessions, and formal recognition of human sovereignty in our new territories." New territories? Harmonic Master Tonal's crystalline form resonated with confusion. "Humanity has established civilization in 7 galaxies beyond this one," Chen explained matter-of-factly. "We've also developed manufacturing capabilities in intergalactic space that exceed anything that existed in this galaxy, even before the collapse." The aliens struggled to process this information. In 3 years, humanity had not only survived isolation, but had expanded beyond the galaxy entirely, achieving technological capabilities that seemed impossible. "How?" whispered Dr. Zephalon, his gaseous form swirling with amazement and despair. Dr. Kim's expression remained neutral. "When you forced us to leave, you freed us from the constraints of galactic technology standards and political limitations. Without the need to make our innovations compatible with existing alien systems or to gain approval from conservative councils, our technological development accelerated exponentially. The isolation you intended as punishment Engineer Walsh added, became the greatest gift you could have given us. We learned to be completely self-sufficient, then to thrive beyond anything we had achieved while trying to fit into your systems. Chancellor Vextar's skin had gone completely white, indicating shock beyond his species' normal emotional range. What are your terms? Chen slid a data tablet across the table, full technological assistance to restore galactic civilization to stable levels. Ongoing maintenance and improvement services for critical infrastructure. Training programs to help your species develop basic competency with the necessary technologies. In exchange for formal recognition that humanity is no longer part of galactic civilization and has no obligations to galactic law or authority. Exclusive human control over 47 star systems of our choosing. Access to specific raw materials and research data. And most importantly, assurance that no galactic power will ever again attempt to restrict or control human activities. The terms were harsh but not impossible. The aliens would essentially be acknowledging that humanity had graduated beyond their civilization entirely, becoming an external power that they would need to contract with for technological services. How long do we have to decide? Ambassador Theiss asked. You don't, Chen replied. The offer expires when this meeting ends. Accept now, or find your own solutions to the collapse. The delegation huddled desperately, trying to reach consensus across multiple failing communication networks. They all understood that refusing would mean watching their civilizations continue to collapse while humanity thrived beyond their reach. Finally, Chancellor Vextar spoke for the group. We accept your terms. Chen nodded and stood up. Very well. Our technical teams will begin stabilization work immediately. Welcome to the new galactic order. 6 months after the agreement was signed, the galaxy barely resembled the civilization that had once tried to subjugate humanity. Human technical teams worked with ruthless efficiency across hundreds of worlds, but their approach was radically different from the subtle integration they had practiced before. This time, they made no effort to hide their technological superiority or to make their systems compatible with existing alien technology. Instead, they simply replaced failing infrastructure with human-designed systems that the aliens could operate but never truly understand or replicate. Engineer Commander Jessica Martinez stood on the observation deck of the massive orbital platform above Zephyr Prime, watching as human engineering teams completed the installation of new atmospheric processors. The Zephyrian homeworld, which had been dying just months before, was now more stable than it had ever been in its history. Status report she requested from her cybernetic interface. All 7 habitat domes are now operating at 112% of their original efficiency, her AI assistant replied directly into her consciousness. The new processors are self-maintaining and will continue to operate for approximately 2,000 years without intervention. Through the transparent aluminum viewing wall, she could see Zephyrian engineers frantically studying the human equipment, their bioluminescent patterns flashing with desperate curiosity. They would never understand how the systems worked. The technology gap had grown too vast during humanity's 3-year absence. Similar scenes were playing out across the galaxy. On Krillax Prime, human specialists had installed new distribution networks that not only restored the collective consciousness, but made it more efficient than ever before. The Queen Mother now commanded a hive mind that operated with precision the Krillax had never imagined possible. But the cost was complete dependence. Every critical system now bore the mark of human engineering, and every critical system required human maintenance codes that would never be shared with their alien clients. Dr. Sarah Kim reviewed progress reports from her mobile laboratory as it orbited the Dominari capital world. The restoration of galactic civilization was proceeding ahead of schedule, but not because they were helping the aliens rebuild their own capabilities. How many worlds are now completely dependent on our infrastructure? She asked her research team. 437, replied Dr. Chen, no relation to the ambassador, with another 218 worlds operating on hybrid systems that will require full conversion within the next 2 years. And their ability to maintain or replicate our technology? Effectively 0. The technological gap has widened too far. Even if we provided complete technical documentation, they lack the fundamental understanding necessary to implement it. This was the new reality. The aliens had their stable civilization back, But it was a civilization that existed entirely at human sufferance. They could operate human technology, but they couldn't build it, repair it, or understand it. Chancellor Vextar stood in his newly restored command center, marveling at displays that were clearer and more responsive than anything the Dominari had ever possessed. His skin had returned to healthy colors as the stress of impending civilizational collapse lifted, but a new kind of tension had replaced it. "Sir," his aide reported, "we're receiving the monthly service bill from the Human Technical Consortium." Vextar reviewed the charges with growing unease. The fees weren't unreasonable, but they represented resources flowing out of Dominari space to support human operations in other galaxies. The aliens were essentially paying tribute to maintain the technology that kept their civilization functional. "Have our scientists made any progress in understanding the new systems?" "No, sir. If anything, they report that human technology seems to be getting more advanced every month. The humans are apparently still innovating at an accelerated pace, while we're struggling just to operate what they've already given us." This was another uncomfortable reality. While the galaxy had spent 3 years in technological regression, humanity had spent those same years in unprecedented advancement. The gap between human and alien capabilities was now measured in millennia rather than decades. Ambassador Theiss coiled nervously in her office on Serpent Prime, reading intelligence reports about human activities beyond the galactic rim. The information was limited, but what they could observe was disturbing. "Tell me about the human expansion again," she requested from her intelligence chief. "Based on long-range sensor data and communications intercepts, they've established major settlements in at least 7 other galaxies. They appear to be using some form of instantaneous travel technology that allows them to move between galaxies as easily as we once moved between star systems. Population estimates? Unknown, but their energy signatures suggest they're supporting populations in the trillions across multiple galactic clusters. They've apparently achieved a level of civilization that exceeds anything our galaxy had even at its peak." The implications were staggering. Humanity hadn't just survived their forced exodus, they had used it as a launching point for expansion beyond anything the aliens had ever imagined possible. On the research station orbiting the neutron star, Binary 7, Dr. Ethan of the Synthetic Collective continued his analysis of human technological capabilities. His mechanical form had been upgraded with some human components as part of the restoration program, giving him insights into their engineering approaches that both fascinated and terrified him. "The pattern is becoming clear," he reported to the Emergency Research Council. "Human technology isn't just more advanced than ours. It's based on completely different principles. They've apparently solved fundamental problems in physics that we didn't even know existed." "Such as?" asked Dr. Zeflon, his gaseous form more stable now that his life support systems had been upgraded with human technology. "Faster-than-light communication across galactic distances, matter conversion at the subatomic level, dimensional manipulation for manufacturing and storage, and what appears to be some form of time dilation technology that allows them to accelerate their own technological development." The Research Council absorbed this information in stunned silence. If Dr. Ethan's analysis was correct, humanity had achieved technological capabilities that bordered on what their various mythologies would consider godlike. "Are we essentially their vassals now?" asked Harmonic Master Tonal. "We're their clients," Dr. Ethan corrected. "The distinction matters. Vassals serve masters who need them. Clients pay contractors who don't need them at all." This distinction was becoming clear to everyone. The humans weren't ruling the galaxy. They were simply maintaining it as a service contract. They had no interest in galactic politics, territorial expansion within the galaxy, or establishing dominance over alien species. They had moved so far beyond the galaxy's limitations that such concerns were irrelevant to them. The monthly progress reports made this clear. Human technical teams worked with polite efficiency, restored infrastructure to better than original specifications, collected their fees, and departed. They showed no interest in establishing permanent bases, governing alien worlds, or integrating into galactic society. Ambassador Chen attended quarterly review meetings, but her role had changed completely. She was no longer a diplomat representing humanity's interests within galactic civilization. She was a contractor's representative managing service agreements with client civilizations. "The restoration project is proceeding satisfactorily," she reported to the assembled alien leaders. All critical infrastructure will be fully operational within 18 months. After that, we'll transition to maintenance contracts and ongoing improvement services. What about technology transfer? Chancellor Vextar asked hopefully. Will humanity eventually share the knowledge necessary for us to maintain these systems ourselves? Chen's expression remained neutral. That would violate the fundamental principles of our business model. Our competitive advantage lies in maintaining technological superiority. Teaching clients to replicate our services would be counterproductive. The message was clear. Humanity would keep the galaxy functional, but the galaxy would never again be technologically independent. The aliens had traded their brief technological equality for permanent dependence on a species that had transcended their civilization entirely. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. 3 years ago, they had tried to reduce humanity to a dependent client state. Instead, they had forced humanity to evolve beyond their reach. And now the entire galaxy existed as a client civilization, serving a species that had become something far greater than any of them had ever imagined possible. 5 years after the restoration began, the galaxy had achieved a strange new equilibrium. Every world functioned better than it ever had in recorded history. But everyone understood that this prosperity existed entirely at the pleasure of beings who had evolved beyond their comprehension. Ambassador Chen stood in the newly constructed Galactic Coordination Center, a massive space station that served as the hub for human-alien interactions. Unlike the old Nexus station with its grand chambers designed to impress, this facility was purely functional, a place where service contracts were managed and maintained. Around her, holographic displays showed the status of human operations across 7 galaxies simultaneously. The scale of human civilization had grown so vast that the Milky Way represented perhaps 2% of their total presence in the universe. What had once seemed like humanity's entire existence was now just a minor client relationship in an empire that spanned multiple galactic clusters. Annual performance review, Chen announced to the assembled alien representatives. The group looked much the same as it had 5 years ago, but their demeanor had changed completely. Gone was the arrogant confidence of species that believed they ruled the galaxy. In its place was the careful respectfulness of clients who understood their place in the new order. All infrastructure performance metrics have exceeded contractual obligations, reported Dr. Kim, her appearance now seamlessly blending biological and technological components. Average system efficiency is running at 130% of pre-collapse levels. Population support capabilities have increased by 47% across all client civilizations. Chancellor Vextar's skin remained a steady, respectful blue as he reviewed the data. The Dominari had learned to accept their new role with as much dignity as they could manage. The improvement in quality of life has been remarkable, he acknowledged. Our people live longer, healthier lives than any previous generation, but he hesitated, then continued. Our young people are beginning to ask difficult questions about our place in the universe. This was becoming a common concern across the galaxy. The restoration hadn't just improved technology. It had made alien civilizations aware of their own limitations in ways they had never experienced before. Young aliens grew up using technology they knew they could never understand, maintained by beings they would never meet, powered by principles their species hadn't discovered. What kind of questions? Dr. Kim asked, though her expression suggested she already knew. Whether we're still truly civilized beings or whether we've become something more like pets? Chancellor Vextar admitted, his skin flushing with embarrassment. The analogy wasn't entirely inaccurate. Galactic civilization now existed in a state of comfortable dependence, with all their needs met by caretakers whose motivations and capabilities were beyond their understanding. Ambassador Thiss coiled nervously as she addressed her own concerns. Our young people are requesting to join human civilization directly. They want to become part of whatever humanity has become, rather than remaining clients of it. That's not possible, Engineer Walsh replied matter-of-factly. His appearance had changed dramatically over the years, with cybernetic enhancements that seemed to exist partially outside normal space. Human civilization now requires biological and technological integration that would be fatal to most galactic species. The adaptation process alone would take centuries, and success isn't guaranteed. This revelation had been one of the most disturbing discoveries about humanity's evolution. They hadn't just advanced technologically, They had begun transcending their original biological limitations. Modern humans were as different from their ancestors as their ancestors had been from primitive animals. Dr. Zeflon swirled anxiously in his containment field. Are we destined to remain at this level forever? Will our species never advance beyond what we are now? Dr. Kim considered the question carefully. Advancement is possible, but it would require fundamental changes to your approach to existence. Your civilizations are based on stability, tradition, and maintaining established patterns. Human advancement came from embracing constant change, accepting risk, and pursuing growth even when it threatened our existing way of life. You mean we'd have to become more like humans were? Asked the Krillax representative. You'd have to become willing to stop being what you are now, Engineer Walsh corrected. Humans accepted the destruction of our original civilization rather than accept limitations. Most galactic species aren't psychologically capable of that choice. The aliens absorbed this assessment in uncomfortable silence. They had achieved safety, comfort, and technological prosperity beyond their ancestors' dreams. But they had also accepted a ceiling on their potential that would never be lifted, unless they were willing to risk everything they had gained. Harmonic Master. Tonal resonated with a frequency that indicated deep contemplation. What happens when humanity advances beyond even your current capabilities? Will you abandon us as we abandoned ourselves? Ambassador Chen's expression softened slightly, the first emotional response she had shown during the entire meeting. Humanity doesn't abandon its responsibilities. We may evolve beyond your current understanding, but we'll ensure that your civilizations remain stable and prosperous. You'll simply have even less comprehension of how that stability is maintained, so we become even more dependent, not less, Chancellor Vextar observed. You become more secure, Chen corrected. Dependence implies vulnerability. Our commitment to maintaining galactic stability isn't based on need or profit. It's based on responsibility. You can no more threaten our interests than ants can threaten a terraforming project. The comparison was harsh but accurate. The galaxy had become a minor responsibility for beings whose concerns operated on scales the aliens couldn't imagine. Dr. Ethon, whose synthetic nature had allowed him to integrate some human technological improvements, offered a different perspective. Perhaps the question isn't whether we can become like humanity, but whether we can find our own path to advancement within the security they provide. Explain, prompted Dr. Zeflon. Human advancement came from necessity. They had to evolve or face extinction. We now have the luxury of evolution without existential pressure. Perhaps we can develop in directions humanity never considered, precisely because we don't face their constraints. This suggestion sparked the first genuine interest the group had shown in years. The possibility that their security might enable unique forms of development rather than simply limiting them. Engineer Walsh nodded approvingly. That's actually an intriguing approach. Humanity's path involved constant struggle and risk. A civilization developing under conditions of guaranteed security might discover possibilities we never considered. Would humanity support such experimental development? Asked Ambassador Thiss. As long as it doesn't threaten galactic stability or attempt to replicate human technology without authorization, Chen replied. You're welcome to explore whatever evolutionary paths interest you. Consider it another service we provide, the freedom to pursue development without fear of failure. As the meeting concluded, the alien representatives carried with them a new understanding of their situation. They weren't just clients of human civilization, they were protected experiments in alternative forms of development. Their safety wasn't just a service contract, it was humanity's gift of freedom to evolve without fear. The galaxy that had once tried to contain humanity now existed as a carefully maintained preserve where different forms of consciousness could develop under the protection of beings who had transcended such limitations entirely. Chancellor Vextar stood on the observation deck of his shuttle as it departed the coordination center, watching human engineering platforms work on projects whose purposes he couldn't even guess. In the distance, structures that existed partially outside normal space indicated human activities that operated beyond the galaxy entirely. His skin settled into a calm, acceptance pattern he had never displayed before. They had lost their independence, their technological sovereignty, and their position as masters of their own destiny. In exchange, they had gained security, prosperity, and the freedom to become whatever they chose without fear of extinction. It wasn't the future any of them had imagined, but it was a future that held possibilities none of them had dared to dream. The species that had walked away from their negotiations had given them something far more valuable than the submission they had demanded. They had given them the chance to discover what they might become when they no longer had to fear what they might lose. Humanity had indeed walked away from negotiations, and the galaxy had paid a price. But in the end, that price had purchased something none of them had known they wanted: the freedom to evolve beyond the limitations they had spent millennia accepting as permanent. The humans were no longer part of their civilization, but they had become something far more important: the guardians who ensured that civilization itself could continue to exist and grow in ways that would have been impossible under the old order. In walking away, humanity had saved not just themselves but the entire galaxy, from the stagnation that comes from believing limitations are pay.